In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew this reflective iridescent choker necklace. Within my lifetime, chokers have already been around twice. Once in the 1990s grunge culture, and then more recently in the 2015, kind of with this resurgence of the Y2K fashion. So I was thinking, it's 2022, is anyone even wearing choker necklaces? So I did a little bit of sleuthing on the runaway fashion for the fall-winter 2022 collection, and lo and behold, the Coach collection had every single model wearing one of these thick, wide choker necklaces. And I'm here to help you get ready for this style with this tutorial. Let's see how it is done. First, you're going to measure the circumference of your neck, and this is going to determine the length of your choker. The width of the choker is going to be determined by the length of the clasps that you'll be using. The ones that I'm using are about 1.25 inches. Now let's take the reflective iridescent fabric, and you can buy this fabric as well as other supplies from my Etsy shop, and I'm going to link it below. We're going to turn over the reflective fabric, and we're going to cut off the selvage. It doesn't have any of the reflective material on it, so it's useless. Now we're going to measure out the strip of fabric for our choker. To mark the width of the strip that we'll be cutting, we're going to take the clasp and we're going to add about 1/2 inch to it to account for the seam allowance. To mark the length of the strip, take your neck circumference length and subtract about 1/2 inch from it to account for the space that the clasp is going to take up. And make sure that all of your measurements are even on all sides. You don't really need to draw the lines here, but they help to see how even your measurements are. Now I'm going to use a rotary cutter and guide it with a ruler to cut out this rectangle. If you don't have a rotary cutter, you could just use regular scissors and cut along the lines. And here it is. This strip is going to be the front face of our choker. For the reverse side, I'm going to use the soft, stretchy pink microfiber fabric. And we're going to need a piece of it that is identical in size to the iridescent strip. So I'm just going to put the iridescent strip on top of the pink fabric, and I'm going to use it as a pattern for cutting out the strip of pink fabric. And again, I'm going to be using the rotary cutter and a ruler to cut out the fabric, but if you don't have one, then you could just trace the pattern and cut it out with scissors. The edge of this pink fabric was a little bit rough, so I trimmed it a little bit more with the rotary cutter. Now that we have these two pieces of fabric, we're going to prepare them for sewing by putting the face side of the pink fabric toward the facing side of the iridescent fabric. Now align these two pieces of fabric evenly on one edge, and we're going to pin them on that edge with pins. The reflective iridescent fabric is a little bit stiff and it's hard to put the pins through, so kind of have to be careful to not stab yourself with the pin. Now they're ready to be sewn together. I'll be using a pink thread and a black thread in my sewing machine. I'm going to use the black thread on the bottom, and I'm going to put the pink thread on the top. I'm going to use a straight stitch the length of about 3 millimeters, and I'm going to leave about 1/4 inch as a seam allowance here. Because of how stretchy this pink fabric is, unfortunately when I began to sew it started to stretch and elongate, and when I was done sewing I had a little bit of an excess of this pink fabric. Because there was nothing I could do at this point, I ended up just cutting off that extra piece. What I should have done instead is I should have used one of these rollie foots. If you have one of these, I would probably recommend using this. Now I'm going to turn the two materials over and I'm going to press really tightly along this top edge of the seam. Once they've been evenly pressed, I'm going to do a top stitch along this edge in order to give it that clean, stitched look. Now to close the remaining edge of the choker, I'm going to fold over about 1/4 of an inch of each of the fabric and fold that inside. The iridescent reflective fabric is very stiff and it won't stay folded if you just press on it, so I ended up putting some pins in it in order to keep it folded. Then I took the pink fabric and also folded it over about the same amount, which is about 1/4 of an inch. And now I'm going to take the pins and actually pin them together in order to keep the two pieces closed. Once both of these edges have been folded and pinned, now I'm going to sew them shut with just a top stitch. And finally, the last step of this project is to take your ribbon clasps and put them onto the choker. First, I align the clasp on one end of the choker ribbon and I press it lightly with my fingers. Then I press the clasp really tightly onto the ribbon with some small pliers. And then repeat the same on the other end of the choker ribbon with the matching clasp. Alright, and that's it. Hope you found this tutorial helpful. Thanks for watching it, and I hope to be back with more tutorials in the future. See you next time.